Hello, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to see if there's any kelpies out there, maybe a wrasse. I've got a fairly flat sea. There's probably about maybe 1 to 2 foot of swell running in, but the wind has turned westerly, so hopefully it's going to flatten it off. It's 7:15. Low water here is about 9:15, 9:20. We've got a big tide tonight. It's about a 0.78, something like that. So it's going to go out a long way, which is good. So we can there should be plenty of tidal movement. Get right out there on those rock ends. I'm fishing a mark. It's quite a favourite mark of mine, actually. I fish it a lot in the winter. Called the Coastguard Skeer, the Cresswell. And you probably can't see out here, but I'll point it out once we're down there. With this sea just being slightly northerly, there's an island called Seal Island, and I'm just going to get tucked in the other side of that where it's a little bit calmer. This area is fairly flat, so if I'm not catching in one place, I have got the option to keep wandering around and changing spots. Got a bucket full of fresh crab that I've been bringing on nicely all the week, so they're absolutely in tip-top condition. Going to give the HST Evo a run out and see if we can get ourselves a fish. So let's get down, hopefully we can get something. So what I'm doing here, you've probably seen on previous videos from last year, rough ground fishing videos. Fishing in the heaviest sort of kelpie areas, venues like this, where you're chucking into some of the roughest ground in the whole of the UK in my view. I personally prefer to use plain sinkers rather than grippers. I just feel that if you're casting on heavy, thick kelp beds, when you're winding in, plain sinker will just slide through kelp a lot easier than a gripper. There is a school of thought that says a gripper's less likely to roll into a little gap. Fair enough, but on a venue like this, when it's virtually flat and there's no tidal movement that's noticeable, it's not like fishing in the Solway or the Bristol Channel. My preference is plain sinkers. Rigs, just a basic pulley rig. I've got a tangled up rig is what I've got. Got 80-pound ASO rig body. And I'm using imps tonight. So that'll just clip onto the rotor. And as you can see, it's metal on metal, knots out the way. When it's hooked up, that's how it'll sit. 80-pound ASO rig body. Bead, 100-pound power swivel, bead, another 100-pound power swivel. 50-pound amnesia, and I'm using a pennel style setup with mustard Viking ultra sharp hooks. I've got a 6-0 on the bottom and I've got a 2-0 on the top to basically hold the bait in place. Bait wise tonight, we've got a box full of fresh crab I've collected during the week, brought them on. These are all perfect, ready to go. So we're going to launch these out, hopefully pick up a codlin or a wrasse. You do get around this area quite a few lobsters, so it's just is what it is basically. You're casting into their backyard, as it were, so you just got to put up with it. So we've got the first rig out. The tide is dropping fairly quickly. I'm just going to keep edging myself down onto the rocks here, getting out into that thick kelp, and within the next hour and a half or so the actual kelp heads will start to show for the first 5 or 10 yards. But this particular venue on a big tide, I do know in this bay it's a little bit deeper, which is kind of partly the reason I've chosen it as well, because on some venues on the rock ends you get a huge tide and they can empty out a bit too much. But this whoop, just as I'm talking now, we're just getting a bite. Go on. Now that could have been classic case in point, where you just get one fairly large bite and then it goes a little bit quiet. But that's not a bad start. The bait's only been in about 5 minutes, so I'm quite encouraged by that. What I'll do is I'll get this next bait. Oh, yeah. Just had a little bit of slack line there. If it pulls again, I'll wind into it. If it is a fish, it's not very big, because anything over a couple of pound you'd know about it if it was hooked properly. It might just be something very small. No, I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get this other rig baited up first. Okay, so bait wise, got some lovely fresh crab. What I've done here, this fella's actually literally just popped in the last hour or so. So I've just simply cut them in half, and all I do is I get the claws and the legs, because they're like jelly, might as well use them, and I'll just put those over the kind of open side of the crab where I've cut it in half, bind it all together, and what that does is the legs and the claw just kind of stop all of the juice from coming out straight away. They just allow it to release slowly on the seabed rather than just firing it out and it getting washed out within the first couple of minutes. So I'll just make a bit of a sort of sausage like that. Whoa. Break it off and get my hook. And just push that round. And all I do is I just pull it slightly over the knot, and then that just gives us a little bit of space for my pennel hook just to wrap that in, nick it into the bait just to stop it from sliding up the line. Of course, it does give you a better chance if the fish is a bit finicky. It just takes that top hook. It does, of course, mean you've got a bigger hook trailing behind it, which is prone to getting snagged, but it's part of it. If I'm getting a lot of fast holds tonight, I'm just going to drop down to one hook, because I don't want two hooks in there just getting caught out. Right, let's get this one on the stand, give that other rod a couple of minutes, and then see if there's anything on it. No, nothing, unfortunately. I'm winding as fast as I possibly can here, because it's very, very rough out there, and a lot of the kelp closer in will only be maybe foot or two under the surface. So once your gear's up and moving, you want to just keep it going. Yeah, still a reasonable amount of bait on there, so that may well suggest that it could have been a lobster, but we'll get another bait out, see what happens. So the tackle I'm using tonight is my heavier ground rod, which is my trusty Ziplex HST Evo. It's got a beefed up tip, it's custom length 1310. Really nice rod for this sort of fishing, pretty powerful. And that's teamed up with me Shimano Aerotechnium, loaded with 55-pound braid with an 80-pound braid leader. Gives us plenty of distance. The line lay on that's probably second to none in my view, so pretty good for hitting distance when you need to. There's actually a reasonable amount of colour in the water tonight, but you do often get that round here, because just over here is Linemouth, and that's a bit of a coal beach along there, so with it being so close you do get a bit of colour in the water, especially on the ebb when it's now moving from south to north. Any colour in the water will kind of get washed around this area, but it's not to worry. I've fished here and had fish when it's been coloured before, so I'm not too bothered about it. Just had a series of small inquiries there, but nothing powerful enough to get us excited, unfortunately. Something having a little look there, but just hoping as well as low water coincides with dusk, it might just work in my favour a little bit. Something having a look there. Again, I fear could well be the unwanted crustacean. Probably just a crab or a lobster pecking away at that. Right, this one's been in a while. Something's been pecking away at it out there, so yep, this is the problem. As the tide drops, it's so easy to get your gear fast in that kelp. Just got to try and keep it moving as quick as you can. That right there's the problem. Yep, nothing but there's me point proved about that hook. That'll just bend out a little bit. I can just push it back into shape and away we'll go. Right, got a couple of sets of lobster pots, one to my left and right, so I'm just having to like cast straight up the middle of this gully here. Should be all right though. Right, come on, let's get a fish. That's what I'm doing here, because the water level is dropping quite rapidly now. I'm just bringing this cup a bit higher. That just means I can keep my braid out of all these kelp heads that are starting to show, because there's nought worse. You turn around, you've had a big slack liner, but your line's caught in the kelp and someone's just flopped over it, and then you're trying to pull it out and it damages your line, and it's a nightmare. So always try and keep your rod well above, elevated well above where the kelp starts to show, and it just makes life a little bit easier. Right, come on. 8:10, probably got about roughly an hour to low water. Light's starting to drop. It's a cracking evening. It's quite overcast. It's not that cold. It's maybe 15, 16 degrees. Light westerly breeze on me back. Am I feeling confident? Don't know. We'll see. Got to say, it's really, really nice to get back out on the rocks, search for codlin. I'm noticing quite a lot of the sort of summer bird species starting to move in. There's a lot of terns. I can't tell what type they are. I don't know if they're Arctic or sandwich terns, or even rosette terns, I'm not sure, but I'm sure I've just seen a little flock of godwits fly close to the surface as well. So I did notice before one or two of the terns had sand eels in their beaks, which is obviously a good sign. especially if you're a bass angler. It's amazing in the summer how shallow the resident codlin and wrasse can be caught, the depths that will swim in. Sometimes I've even fished on big tides before where you're wading out into the kelp and you almost disturb a fish that's probably only sitting in a couple of feet of water. And really for your summer rock end cod and wrasse fishing, you ideally want to see flat and clear. It's flat tonight, but it's not clear, but I'm not too fussed. Quarter to 9 now. It's just starting to get a little bit dusky, a little bit cooler. Got to say, I've had absolutely nothing. I had more interest casting off the rocks over there, but you never know, like an oil change. If the tide turns, gets a little bit darker, water's dropped a lot now. I mean, you can see Seal Island over here now. It's pretty, standing very proud out the water, so it's probably dropped, I reckon, 4 or 5 feet, which is good though, because it creates plenty of current movement for the fish to get interested. That's the theory anyway. Just had a bit more of a positive inquiry there. Come on, just after one fish to save the blank. Absolutely beautiful night tonight. Bit of a sunset going on behind us there. It's looking a little bit grey, but don't think it's going to rain. So you might have noticed that the pulleys I'm using are quite long. And the reason I use longer pulleys on these rough ground marks, did I imagine that, or did that rod just bite quite savagely? No, something having a look, but definitely a bit of an inquiry out there. I'll give it a minute. So, I like to use long pulleys for 2 reasons. The first is, the longer your mono, especially a rig body, the less braid you've got against rock and kelp and stuff. And for me, I prefer to have mono in doing the heavy lifting, if you like, in amongst the braid. So the longer your rig, the less braid you're going to have in contact with the kelp and the rocks. And secondly, what it means is that when you're fishing marks like this, I like to check me rigs every cast. And I can feel just at the bottom here, there's a little bit of a nick. So what I can do, I can just take 4 or 5 inches off, tie the hook on, and I've still got, yeah, there's definitely something having a go here. It's bit more positive. Anyway, means I've still got enough hook length to play with, but got more important matters at hand here. Those bites there definitely look a bit more encouraging. Come on. Yeah, right. Right, I'm just gonna wait. I feel one more bite because I've had a couple of decent lunges when I was standing rattling on there. So I'm hoping that there's a fish just lying on, and every now and again it's shaking its head. Right, I'm gonna take my chances and go for this. Ah, nothing, can you believe it? Right, I'm gonna leave that a second, get a fresh bait on, and get out again. Can't believe that. I'm pretty annoyed about that bite there. That looked a bit more lively, a bit more fish-like. But, well, as evidenced by the lobster pots not that far out, you do get a lot of lobsters around here, so it might have just been a slightly better lobster, just having a bit of a wrestle with it and trying to pull the bait back into its lair. I'm a little bit disappointed tonight because I was planning on an early finish from work and going further up the coast, maybe Cresswell or Beadnell or somewhere like that, but by the time I thought I'm either going to get, 3 hours down, 2.5 hours down, 1 hour up at Cresswell, or if I go up there, I'm cutting my time by about an hour and a half by the time I get fishing. So I thought I'll just stay a little bit closer to Newcastle and give myself a bit more fishing time. But you kind of always think I wish I would have been better just taking less fishing time but going a little bit further up the coast. Anyway, we're here now, so I'm just going to get another. This is a sort of small to medium sized crab. I've just peeled it. I'm just going to whack that on. It's getting quite dusky now. Just gone 9 o'clock. I'm going to have a couple more casts. I'll probably have a couple of chucks into the flood. I have got my headlight. We'll just see. As I said before, I'm just after one fish. That's all I've asked. So, annoyingly, when I've gone to wind it in, something's happened where my braid must have been stuck or under a bit of weed or next to a rock halfway, and I've pulled it and it's just nicked it and bang. So I've lost a fair bit of line, so I've just had to tie a new leader on. But I thought while I'm doing that, I'll take the opportunity to show you the knot that I use to tie me clip onto my leader. It's dead simple. It's called the Palomar knot. Really easy. So hopefully you can see the white braid against my dark coat here. Get your braid, make a loop. All you do, through the eye, like that, dead simple, and then you just tie an overhand knot, like that. Just pull that down, keep it neat. So you get that. Then your loop that you've made, just put that over your clip and just gently pull it tight so it's all equal. And you get a lovely, neat little knot that's doubled around your clip or your swivel or whatever type of fishing you're doing. It's a doddle to tie, and it's absolutely bulletproof in terms of its strength. I've used this for off the boat for taupe. I always use this knot for braid to links. You can use a grinner. For me, I prefer that. I've never ever had one of those slip, so might help you. This tide should be starting to flood soon, so let's get another bait out there. hopefully intercept a cod or wrasse. Well, unfortunately, it's probably going to be a blank, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. As we always say, Gary and I on the channel will just give it to you in its raw form. Sometimes we catch fish, sometimes we blank. That's just sea fishing for you in the UK, unfortunately. But anyway, it's getting dark. I might have one more cast. It's not looking good. I've had 4 or 5 casts, haven't had anything other than what are probably lobster bites. Although saying that, just as I'm saying that, that looked a bit more positive. Come on. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tight lines, keep fishing. We'll see you on the next one.